Happy to be back after celebrating my favorite day of the year. Let's get into it. Hi, hello, and welcome in to the Ball Don't Lie podcast. My name is Austin Elmore. I am your host. I think this is episode number 180 of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. Did not have an episode last week. The main reason for that is that it was a busy week, a lot of red stuff going on, and opening day is my favorite day of the year. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to celebrate that and go all in on that and some of the other stuff that I had going on. And so I took the week off. There also was absolutely nothing happening on the Bengals front. There was one thing that happened, and we'll start with that in just a second. And then, of course, we'll get into what's going on right now with the NFL annual meetings in Phoenix. There's also been a couple of new rule changes added to the NFL this year in a situation that's ongoing with NFL referees that we need to get into as well. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get started. As I take a drink of coffee, this is like the earliest I've been up to do a podcast. I used to do them on Tuesday nights, and then I started doing them on Wednesday mornings. I was so excited to talk today. I got up at like 6 a.m. and made a full breakfast and had a cup of coffee. And I mean, I don't know, I'm just fired up right now. I've been sleeping a lot better. So that's a good thing. Anyways, all right, let's get into it. The big news that I guess you could say happened with the Bengals over the last week or so was the re signing, the signing back, the reunion, however you want to describe it, with Joe Flacco. The Bengals signed Joe Flacco to a 1-year, $6 million deal. It can go up to $9 million, if I'm not mistaken, with incentives. Most of those are playing time incentives. The Bengals did add a couple of void years to this contract, lowering that cap hit to about $3 million, $3.5 million this season. And I was surprised by this. I've said it on the air and I've said it on the podcast that I thought Joe Flacco would wait until July or August or maybe even into the start of the season before he decided on which team he wanted to sign with. And I think that was the reason why the Bengals signed Josh Johnson just a couple of weeks ago, is because they didn't know, A, if Joe Flacco would be back, and B, when Joe Flacco would be back. And so for that reason, they signed another long term veteran quarterback in Josh Johnson to be able to be that guy in case Flacco decided not to come back. And I think it took everybody by surprise that Flacco came back when he did, and including Zac Taylor. Zac spoke yesterday at the NFL annual meetings and basically said, like, I didn't think we'd be hearing from Joe Flacco until August. And he came back way earlier than that, prior to the draft in the middle of March. And I think there's a couple of different reasons for this. Number one, it doesn't seem like there was much of a market for Flacco. The only other market or team that you heard a lot about was the Las Vegas Raiders, and the idea of them using Joe Flacco as a guy who can mentor and help the number one overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. And I don't know if Flacco was interested in that. I don't know if he wanted to move all the way out to Las Vegas and be that far away from his family. I don't know if he's interested in mentoring a guy to take his job. I know that Flacco wants to start. And based off the press conference he had with the Bengals media and everybody who covers the team when he re signed this deal, you could tell this was a dude that was frustrated that he did not get an opportunity to go somewhere and start based off the way he played last season. So let's not forget. I mean, Flacco was 1-5 as a starter when he was in Cincinnati, but that really wasn't because he played poorly. I think he had one game where he played really badly, and that was the New England game. Threw a bad pick six to Marcus Jones in that game. Just wasn't very good, to be completely honest. The Packers game, that was the game that he played as soon as he got here, just a couple of days later. I mean, even that was a pretty good performance from Joe Flacco, all things considered. So I think in his mind, he felt like he had done enough to earn a starting job, or at least a chance to compete for a starting job. And he just didn't get that type of interest from teams. And I think he also thought that this draft class is very, very thin at quarterback. It's Fernando Mendoza and pretty much nobody else. Maybe Ty Simpson, depends on who you ask in that world of the NFL. But there wasn't really a lot of interest, it seemed like, in Flacco. He went as far as to say that he thinks teams are dumb for not giving him that opportunity. So this is a dude that's definitely frustrated, but he looks around and says, listen, if there's anywhere for me to be, it's Cincinnati. I have this opportunity with these guys and with these players and to be with Joe Burrow. That's a winning culture. It's a coach that I really like. It's a team in a city that really embraced me. I'm going to be in Cincinnati. And as a Bengals fan, as somebody who talks about him every day, I've said this many times, I am continually blown away by the transparency and the honesty and the realism and just the nature of the character of Joe Flacco. I just think I'm blown away by it. I'm very impressed by it. And to see that again in that press conference was just further confirmation of that from Flacco. And I'm glad that he's back with the Bengals. What does this mean for Josh Johnson? I don't know. I don't know that Josh is going to end up being on the team, but the Bengals typically do have at least four quarterbacks that they bring with them into training camp. I would expect Josh Johnson to be one of those. The Bengals' current quarterback room is as follows: Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, Josh Johnson, Sean Clifford. They might add another one late in the NFL draft. They have two seventh-round picks. I've heard they've been poking around on a couple of different quarterbacks that maybe they might try to pick and stick on the practice squad this coming season. So that was the biggest news, really. And the other news is that the Bengals continually have continued not to sign a linebacker. And over the course of the last couple of weeks and being at the NFL owners meetings, the what I should say is the media and the coaches being at the NFL owners meetings and starting to understand a little bit what their priorities are and what their plan is, I think it's become a little bit more clear. Here's my understanding of the way the Bengals view the linebacker room after listening to what Zac Taylor said to the media earlier this week. First of all, it's the same exact linebacker room as it was at the end of the season. It's Demetrius Knight, it's Barrett Carter, it's Oren Burks, it's Shaka Hayward, it's Joe Giles Harris. And Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris are special teamers. That's going to be their role. Oren Burks is a veteran, and he was okay last year. And emphasis on okay. He was by no means a game changing player. It's more of a depth piece. But Zac Taylor brought him up at the NFL meetings as well. It's like, yeah, we really like what Oren Burks can bring to that room and that veteran leadership and yada, yada, yada. And I just have a hard time believing that to be true. That's nothing against Oren Burks. It's just looking at the way that that position played last year. They were horrible. When those two were on the field, it was 10 points per drive given up. And so the Bengals have looked at their defense and they have decided not to add a linebacker to that room through free agency. And there were multiple linebackers available, and there still is. Like a guy like Bobby Wagner, for example, would be a perfect addition, as far as I'm concerned, to this defense and to that linebacker room. But that doesn't seem to be what the Bengals are interested. Zac Taylor said that they are counting on Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight to take a big jump, and that he believes those guys are capable of taking that jump. That is a lot to ask for for two second-year players who played horribly in year number 1. What if they don't take that jump? What if they regress? One of the things we've learned about the defense over the last couple of years is that it can always get worse. What if it does get worse? The problem is your depth is Joe Giles Harris and Shaka Hayward and Oren Burks. It's not going to get any better with those guys on the field. So I have a hard time understanding why the Bengals aren't at least adding something to that room right now with a veteran in free agency. Now, I believe that they're going to add to that room in the draft. But I think they very well could do what they did a couple of years ago and draft two of them. Did what they did just last year and draft two of them at some point in the draft. It would not surprise me at all, just because they feel like they need to fix the depth in that room and feel like competition might be a good thing. I don't know. I don't understand their plan at linebacker at all. Like at the owners' meetings yesterday, Zac Taylor said that it's not that we're not prioritizing that position, but there's been other positions of need that are a better fit. Well, that's the exact definition of not prioritizing something, because if you were prioritizing the linebacker room, those other issues, those other needs, those other positions that you consider a fit would not overtake the biggest need, which is the linebacker. I don't understand where Zac Taylor is coming from on that. I don't understand the organizational philosophy, but it has at least clarified to me over the past couple of days. They believe that the addition of Boye Mafe, that the addition of Brian Cook, that the addition of Jonathan Allen, and that the guys that they add in the draft, more than likely dudes in the secondary, I still think they're going to draft a corner in the first round. They believe that those guys all together will make Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight Jr. better. And so the addition of those guys will help those two young players take the leap. So all the rooms around them getting fixed are what's going to fix the linebacker room. That's what their mentality is. That's the reflection. Like, based off their actions are reflecting that this is their priority. This is their philosophy. This is their priority. I apologize. I'm struggling to find my words this morning. But that to me is indicative of what their plan is, that by adding the other guys, you'll help the young guys like Knight and Carter take a leap. That is a risky way of doing things. It is not the way I would do things. I disagree fundamentally with that mindset from the Bengals, but this is the path that they have chosen to go down. And so we'll see how it goes. I think that they will also use that philosophy when it comes to the draft. How can we help our linebackers get better? So I think they'll draft a defensive lineman, either an edge rusher or an interior defensive lineman. I think they'll draft at least two cornerbacks. I think they'll draft another linebacker. And I think they'll end up drafting, like an offensive lineman or maybe a quarterback with one of those seventh round picks. And they'll address offense. I think they'll get a tight end as well. So, like, I think it's defense and building the depth and helping that all helping the linebackers. It's the only thing that really makes sense. Because the way that they've structured the contracts and the way they've set themselves up with the cap and the players that they've decided to keep and the players that they haven't gone after in free agency, nothing else really adds up. Nothing else really makes sense. And I don't know how else to explain it other than that. I think it's a huge risk. I hope that they're right, and I would love nothing more than those guys to take a step forward. And I do think I'm also kind of talking out of both ends of my mouth here, because if you know my opinion on Shamar Stewart, I remain steadfast in my belief in Shamar Stewart, and I have nothing to go off of other than he's a really, really good athlete. He seems like a smart kid. He went through and dealt with a lot of crap last year with his agent and with his parents and with the uh, defaulting language in his contract and missing training camp and missing OTAs and missing all and not getting the reps and blah 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 blah. Zac Taylor was effusive in his praise of Shamar Stewart towards the end of last season, especially overcoming the injuries he had, returning, getting his first career sack, taking a step forward. So because of the fact that he doesn't have to deal with any of that stuff this year, he knows what it's like to be in the NFL. He gets a full off season of the off season program, and Jerry Montgomery as his defensive line coach. For that reason, I believe that Shamar Stewart can take a step forward and be an impact player on this Bengals defense. Now, it's one thing to say that about him, but why can't I say that about Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter, who both are very smart dudes, who are athletic dudes, who tackled better towards the end of last season, who ultimately did take minor steps forward towards the end of last season. I just don't trust them yet. And I don't trust that position and the importance of that position and all the different things that you need to be able to do at that very critical second level of the defense. I just haven't seen enough from them or believe that they have enough of it in them to think that it's going to take this huge jump. But I can see the path that the Bengals are trying to take when it comes to that. I'm just not convinced. So that was the big thing, and that was my big takeaway from what happened at NFL annual meetings when it comes to the Bengals. Now, there were some rule changes that were approved, five of them when it comes to the NFL, and I'm going to pull those up right now uh, because every year the competition committee and the teams and everybody they put together a set of rule changes and proposals, and those proposals will um, either get voted they'll get voted on, they'll either get approved or not approved when it comes to the new rules for the 2027 or for the 2026 season. And I'm struggling to find it at the moment. but let's see if we can. All right, here we go. So these are the new approved playing rules for the NFL in 2026. The kicking team can declare an onside kick at any time during the game. Previously, it could only be in the fourth quarter and you're trailing and blah, blah, blah. Now, a team can do an onside kick whenever they want. The competition committee also eliminated the incentive for the kicking team to intentionally kick the ball out of bounds when they're kicking off from the 50-yard line. So when there was like a penalty on the extra point and it got enforced on the kickoff and teams would be kicking off from the 50-yard line, there was a loophole in the rule basically that if you kick the ball out of bounds, it was 20 yards from the spot of the kick or 25 yards from the spot of the kick. So you would be playing the field position game and pin those teams back as opposed to the touchback or something like that. So basically, it's getting rid of the loophole that prevents teams from doing that and pinning the team back in field position wise. They also have voted to modify the kickoff alignment requirements for the receiving team's players in the setup zone. I don't know exactly what this means yet. I haven't seen anything that indicates how it's going to be different, but that setup zone where the receiving team's players are, I guess that just changes the alignment that they're allowed to have. I don't exactly have the details on that yet. They also voted to allow league personnel to consult with on field officials when considering disqualifications for both flagrant football acts and non football acts without being called on the field. So, an example is a player does something that the ref doesn't see and doesn't get flagged for, but that's worthy of an ejection. Think back to Jamar Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey. Basically, what this means is the NFL can buzz in from New York and say, hey, that guy needs to be thrown out of the game or that guy doesn't need to be thrown out of the game, whatever it might be. This basically allows the league to be able to do that, and it makes sense so that, for transparency purposes, if nothing else. And the other one, and this one is an interesting one. It kind of opens up its entirely own can of worms for 1 year only to allow the NFL officiating department to correct clear and obvious mistakes made by on-field officials that impact the game in the event that there is a work stoppage involving the game officials represented by the NFL Referees Association. So this has kind of been a a strange thing undercurrent that's happening right now in the NFL. So the NFL Referees Association and the NFL are negotiating a new agreement that determines how much these guys get paid and how much they have to do and this, that, and the other. And apparently these two sides are very, very, very far apart on what they want. Now, keep in mind, these guys are part-time NFL officials. They all have other real jobs outside of the NFL and being an official, and they make on average $385,000 a year. That's pretty good living for a part-time job. And the NFL basically is saying, "Hey, we'll give you raises, we'll give you more money, but in return, we want you to give us more of your time. We want you to go through more training. We want you to um, eh, we want to start putting guys in playoff games, officials assigned to playoff games based off of performance, not based off of seniority. We want to extend the probation period for new officials. Like, there's a lot of different things that the NFL wants. It says in this article by ESPN, they want to increase the probationary period for new officials from 3 years to 5 years. They want to shorten the dead period during the offseason to allow for more training, including a requirement for lower performing officials to work spring football games to help improve their performance. They also want to reduce the seniority based approach to covering playoff games and largely replace it with assignments based off performance. A league source told ESPN, "We really want to follow the model, which is the NFL's kind of DNA, of you pay for performance. You have to perform every day. Players do it, coaches do it, lawyers do it, and owners do it, and we continue trying to test ourselves and improve." So basically, the NFL is saying, hey, we want to reward you based off your performance, not based off your seniority. We want more of your time and we want to incentivize you to be a better performing official. And we're going to pay you more year over year if you do this. And the NFL Referees Association wants nothing to do with it. They want like way more money. I don't understand that. Like, I have never believed in the idea of seniority determining things. I've always believed that if you're good at it, like you should be the one getting the opportunity. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it or how long you've been in the business, and especially when it comes to postseason games and the biggest and most important and most watched games in the NFL. If you're having guys that are there just because they've been there a long time, that's not good. You want the best performing officials to be doing those games so that you can ensure the best possible outcome, the cleanest possible outcome, and obviously the transparency that comes with that, especially with the gambling that is such a big part of sports in today's day and age. I don't understand why the officials, other than it's taking up more of their time, but you're making a lot more money. I mean, this is like a 7.5% raise every single year of this agreement. So, like, you're looking at close to $20,000 of a raise in the first year. And after that, and after that, and after that, it will only continue to go up. I don't understand. I just don't get this. And I think is detrimental to the game of football, the officials and the referees association. I also think that the NFL makes so much freaking money that they should just give them whatever they want. And if you do that and you have more control, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. Egos, man. Egos. I don't understand it. All right, that does it for me on this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening to this on Wednesday morning, I'm going to be in for Mo Egger from 3 to 6 on Wednesday afternoon. I'm actually going to be having a conversation with Paul Daner Jr. from The Athletic and from the Growler podcast. He's out in Phoenix for the NFL annual meetings. Talk to him about what he took away from what Zach said, my thoughts and everything basically that I just shared, and get Paul's reaction to that, and so much more. And obviously, we'll be talking about the Reds and Pirates, Paul Skeens and Andrew Abbott in the rubber match of that game. That's going to be from 3 to 6 on ESPN 15:30 on Wednesday, April the 1st. If not, you can hear me weekdays from noon to 3 with Tony Pike on Tony Pike Cincy 360 on ESPN 15:30 as well. Follow me on any and all social media at Auty Elmore. That's AUTYELMORE. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. As always, have fun, be safe. Go Bucks.